Welcome, curious minds, to the Deep Dive, where we leap through portals of ink, spellcraft, and starships. We're new here, exploring these fantastical worlds, so if you're enjoying our deep dive, please consider liking and subscribing on YouTube. It genuinely helps us share these conversations with more fellow travelers.
Today, we're embarking on a really intense deep dive into J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And this isn't just another installment in the series. It's a seismic shift in the wizarding world.
Definitely.
It's really the moment the comforting veneer of childhood innocence just shatters, and the grim realities of war, propaganda, and profound isolation truly set in for our hero.
Yeah.
It's a coming-of-age story that feels less like a conventional Bildungsroman and maybe more like a stark political allegory.
That's a powerful way to put it, yeah. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the intricate, often brutal layers of this colossal fifth installment. We'll be pulling out key nuggets of insight, challenging some popular interpretations, maybe, and exploring the surprising facts and emotional weight tucked within these pages.
There's so much there.
Absolutely. Like, what was Harry's true experience stuck at Privet Drive? What was the real, insidious cost of Fudge's denial? And what does it truly mean for everyone involved when trust just crumbles and the world outside the Ministry of Magic has to face facts on its own? You've provided some incredibly rich source material, and we are absolutely ready to dissect it.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start with a bit of a hot take, maybe, something that cuts to the core of the book. Many readers view the Ministry's denial as simply, a political blunder or maybe just cowardice.
Right, that's the common view.
But I'd argue it was far more calculated, almost an act of psychological warfare against its own citizens, particularly Harry, designed to isolate and discredit anyone who dared to speak the truth. What evidence from the text supports that kind of interpretation, and how did it really hit Harry?
That's a really compelling distinction, actually, because it wasn't just like passive ignorance, was it? It felt like a highly deliberate and pervasive campaign. From the very first pages, we see Harry at Privet Drive completely cut off.
Utterly alone.
Yeah, and his best friends, Ron and Hermione, are sending these vague, maddeningly uninformative letters. They're filled with lines like, we can't say much about, you know what, obviously, or we've been told not to say anything important in case our letters go astray.
Which is just infuriating for him.
Exactly. This isn't just poor communication. It's a systemic withholding of vital information, even from those closest to him. And that cultivates this suffocating sense of isolation for Harry that makes him feel actively excluded and, worse, distrusted.
And his anger and frustration are they're palpable, right? Radiating off the page. He's trapped, hiding in flower beds, desperate to eavesdrop on Muggle news for any hint of what Voldemort might be doing.
Pathetic, really, when you think about it, his desperation.
It is. And the source material tells us he was so furious at Ron and Hermione that he had thrown both their birthday presents of Honeyduke's chocolates away unopened. That's a visceral expression of teenage angst, sure, but it's fueled by genuine, maddening isolation and this feeling of being gaslit by his closest companions.
Yeah, gaslit is a good word for it.
He even reflects on how galling to be told not to be rash by a man who had served 12 years in the wizard prison, Azkaban, referring to Sirius.
Oh, yeah, the irony.
There's a delicious irony there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
He's being told to stay calm by someone who's, well, arguably pretty impulsive himself.
To put it mildly.
All while Harry feels completely unheard and profoundly alone.
Precisely. And beyond that personal isolation, the public narrative is actively and, relentlessly turned against him. The Daily Prophet, under the Ministry's heavy influence, isn't just ignoring the truth, it's actively manufacturing a false reality.
They're basically a state mouthpiece at this point.
Totally. They're portraying Harry as deluded, attention-seeking, making snide comments about him. If some outlandish story appears, they'd print, a tale worthy of Harry Potter. If someone has a funny accident, it's, let's hope he hasn't got a scar on his forehead or we'll be asked to worship him next.
It's just nasty.
It's not journalism. It's a carefully orchestrated media smear campaign designed to systematically undermine his credibility.
And the goal seems pretty clear, right?
Yeah, if Harry were to speak the truth, no one would believe him. They're effectively neutralizing him as a dissenting voice before he can even really speak out.
So it moves beyond just a lack of information. It's an active, state-sponsored campaign of misinformation and discrediting.
Exactly.
They're not just ignoring the truth. They're creating this false narrative that's just more palatable, more comfortable for the public.
Easier to swallow than Voldemort being back.
Much easier. And then there's his scar. It used to be this vital warning system, right? A direct link to Voldemort's presence.
Yeah, a key plot point.
But now, even that's dismissed. It's described dismissively as a regular irritation, old news.
Wow.
It's almost as if his own physical manifestation of trauma, this genuine connection to the conflict, is being actively gaslit, both by the authorities and, by extension, the public who reads the prophet.
That's a really crucial insight. The Ministry's denial isn't just about protecting themselves from a frightening reality. It's about controlling the flow of information and systematically discrediting dissent. This creates an environment where Harry, the primary truth teller, is psychologically attacked, made to feel like he's going mad.
Which he almost does.
Yeah, and rendered ineffective. It's a chilling portrayal of how authoritarian regimes exploit public fear and that desire for comfort over truth.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really makes you consider how silence and misinformation can become such a potent weapon, not just in a magical world, but, in our own daily lives.
Absolutely.
What happens when the truth tellers are branded as liars? Not through reasoned debate, but through aggressive propaganda. What happens when the official narrative is so aggressively pushed that alternative viewpoints are simply suffocated? It fosters a dangerous echo chamber, doesn't it?
It does.
A society that prefers comforting lies to uncomfortable truths is just. It's ripe for manipulation.
It absolutely begs the question about the fundamental responsibility of those in power. Their duty to convey accurate information, even when that truth is inconvenient or terrifying.
Yeah.
Fudge's actions and the Ministry's overt influence on the press demonstrate a profound dereliction of that duty. And it creates this societal vulnerability that Voldemort is all too ready to exploit.
So, if that cold open was truly about the insidious cost of silence, let's transition into the broader interconnected themes we see playing out all through the book. This idea of a world under siege, both internally and externally. The first theme we absolutely have to dive into is this destructive dance of propaganda, denial, and authority. The core idea here is that the Ministry of Magic, under Cornelius Fudge, is actively suppressing the truth about Voldemort's return. And it's due to this toxic cocktail of fear, political ambition, and a desperate clinging to power.
Indeed. Fudge's motivations are laid out with, a stark clarity, really. He's utterly convinced that Dumbledore is plotting to overthrow him.
Which is absurd.
Completely. And critically, he simply cannot accept that Dumbledore never wanted the Minister's job. It's inconceivable to him, this deep-rooted fear of Dumbledore, fueled by Dumbledore's immense popular support and his, let's face it, undeniable intellectual and magical superiority. That drives Fudge's entire catastrophic response to Voldemort's return. He perceives Dumbledore as a rival for political power, not as an indispensable ally against an existential threat.
It's such a classic case, isn't it? A leader prioritizing personal insecurity over collective safety. It's the playbook of a classic authoritarian. When faced with an inconvenient, terrifying truth that threatens to undermine your authority, what do? You attack the messenger. And what better messenger to attack than the one person the wizarding world broadly trusts? Dumbledore.
Exactly.
This fear, this almost paranoid delusion, leads the Ministry to lean heavily on the Daily Prophet not to report any of what they're calling Dumbledore's rumor-mongering. The official channels of information, the public press, become overt tools of state-sponsored denial, shaping public perception to fit a convenient false narrative.
And this extends deeply into individual actions and loyalty, too. Take Percy Weasley, for instance.
Oh, Percy.
His baffling promotion after the Crouch incident, where he so spectacularly failed to notice his superior, was under the Imperious Curse.
Right, hello.
It's a stark example of how the Ministry rewards blind loyalty, even if that loyalty is attached to incompetence or a fundamentally flawed narrative. His subsequent heartbreaking estrangement from his own family, Mrs. Weasley being in a right state, he slammed the door in her face.
So awful.
It highlights the seductive power of ministry acceptance and political advancement. Percy chooses career and official validation over the deep familial bonds and the truth his family represents.
It's a chilling demonstration of how easily fear and political ambition can corrupt individual judgment. turning people against their own.
It really is.
It's such a tragic subplot. Percy, who is intelligent, right? He's not stupid.
No, not at all.
But he buys into the Ministry's narrative, even when it means rejecting his own parents, who he knows wouldn't risk everything without proof. It just underscores how deeply denial can permeate and divide, even within the closest families.
And Fudge's own inability to accept Voldemort's return until he literally sees it firsthand.
In the Ministry atrium.
Merlin's beard here, in the Ministry of Magic. That is the ultimate catastrophic example of clinging to denial.
It's almost comical if it weren't so terrifying.
It literally takes Voldemort showing up, wand in hand, in the heart of the Ministry for Fudge to finally, undeniably, see the light. That's a testament to the dangerous inertia of denial.
So powerful.
And this brings up a critical point. How does this reflect real-world dynamics, where official narratives clash violently with inconvenient truths and personal empowerment consistently trumps collective safety? We've seen this phenomenon repeat itself throughout history, haven't we? From governmental cover-ups to, say, climate change and denial.
Definitely.
Leaders prioritize maintaining power or a facade of control over addressing a looming, often terrifying threat. And frequently, it has devastating consequences for the populace.
Yeah.
The Ministry's actions aren't just a fantastical plot point. They're a mirror reflecting very real human and political failures, echoing the chilling pragmatism of, well, totalitarian regimes sometimes.
A truly chilling parallel, and one that resonates so deeply with our contemporary world. Okay, let's pivot now to our second major theme. Trust, secrecy, and the bitter taste of betrayal.
Okay.
The Order of the Phoenix, by necessity, operates in profound secrecy, but this very necessity, while vital for survival, inadvertently breeds distrust and resentment among its members and, crucially, those it protects, like Harry.
It's a classic wartime dilemma.
A double-edged sword, absolutely. Cuts both ways.
It's fascinating to observe the internal conflict that secrecy creates, even among allies who are, ostensibly on the same side.
Yeah.
Harry's initial fury at Ron and Hermione for being together at the Burrow without him and for withholding information is a prime example.
That explosion.
Yeah, he bursts out. "You've still been here. Me, I've been stuck at the Dursleys for a month."
Pure rage.
This isn't just teenage petulance, right? It's raw emotion, a feeling of being deliberately excluded and profoundly uninformed. Even if the secrecy is meant for his protection, it feels like a profound betrayal to him, and that erodes the very trust the Order needs to function.
It perfectly illustrates that even benevolent secrecy can inflict psychological wounds.
Absolutely.
And it absolutely fuels his anger, which, as we know, becomes a significant and dangerous plot point later on. That visceral frustration at the lack of news, the hurt that they had all been together without him, his fury at being followed and not told about it, all the feelings he was half ashamed of finally burst their boundaries.
Yeah, the book really hammers that home.
The source material really emphasizes the immense emotional and psychological toll the secrecy takes on Harry, highlighting the paradox that the very measures meant to protect him are simultaneously isolating him and making him more vulnerable.
And then there's the constant gnawing tension surrounding Sirius's confinement at Grimmauld Place.
Ugh, poor Sirius.
Mrs. Weasley, driven by this fierce protective instinct, desperately wants to shield Harry. But this clashes fundamentally with Sirius's recklessness and his profound, desperate need for freedom.
He's going stir-crazy.
Totally. Sirius hasn't seen daylight for months, and this forced confinement makes him increasingly bitter and impulsive. It causes him to occasionally get confused about whether you're you or your father, Harry.
Which is deeply unsettling for Harry.
And dangerous. The secrecy and protective measures designed to keep him safe also become a source of profound emotional distress and intense conflict within the Order, ultimately contributing to his tragic recklessness. His gilded cage becomes his tomb, essentially.
And that profound need for information, coupled with the Ministry's outright denial, leads directly to the formation of Dumbledore's army, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A direct consequence.
The Ministry's willful ignorance means Umbridge is actively sabotaging defense against the dark arts education, turning it into this theoretical farce.
Useless.
So the DA forms out of sheer desperate necessity. As Hermione puts it, learning how to defend ourselves properly. Not just theory, but the real spells.
Taking matters into their own hands.
Exactly. But it has to remain utterly secret, relying on Hermione's ingenious protean charm to communicate. This group is built on a foundational trust among peers.
A trust the authorities have completely abandoned.
Precisely. A trust that the official authority has completely forfeited. It's a powerful grassroots rebellion of knowledge born from the very secrecy and denial the ministry is perpetuating, a direct response to a vacuum of truth.
This brings up a really critical dilemma, though. How much information can be withheld, even for benevolent reasons, before it irrevocably corrodes trust?
Yeah.
Before it creates unintended, potentially catastrophic consequences, perhaps leading to the very chaos it sought to prevent. The necessity of secrecy in wartime, as this book so starkly illustrates, often comes at an unquantifiable psychological cost. Not just to the individuals involved, but to the very fabric of relationships that define a community.
That's a truly uncomfortable truth. Okay, let's move now to our third theme, which is deeply personal for Harry. The immense weight of expectations and the crushing burden of heroism. Harry is constantly battling external perceptions, the media's narrative, Fudge's attacks, and his own raw internal struggles as this reluctant, traumatized hero. It's definitely not all golden snitches and cheering crowds anymore.
No, not at all. This book plunges Harry into a very dark and deeply complex psychological space. His anger and irritability are just pervasive, almost a constant companion.
He snaps at everyone.
Yeah, he's short-tempered with Hedwig, Ron, Hermione. His scar, which used to be this dramatic, infrequent warning system, is now a regular irritation. And he feels like he's slowly turning into a kind of Ariel that was tuned in to tiny fluctuations in Voldemort's mood.
That's terrifying.
This constant internal torment, this agonizing psychic link, is profoundly exacerbated by the external pressure of being doubted and publicly ridiculed. It's a potent illustration of the psychological toll of gaslighting and profound isolation on a young mind.
He's also battling immense self-doubt, isn't he? A feeling of inadequacy that's intensified by the lack of external validation. When Ron, not him, becomes a prefect, Harry's internal monologue reveals how deeply this affects him. I've definitely done more. But maybe. Dumbledore doesn't choose prefects because they've got themselves into a load of dangerous situations.
Ouch.
He questions his own worth beyond being the boy who lived, especially when the ministry's attacks and public disbelief strip away that heroic title, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. He's wrestling with the very definition of heroism and his place within it.
And a major, almost brutally illustrative element of this theme is his occlumency lessons with Snape.
Oh, God, those lessons. Yeah.
They're described as utterly horrible, a torment. Harry feels he's getting worse with every lesson. Snape's contemptuous, sneering style telling Harry, "You have no subtlety, Potter," or "You let me get in too far, you lost control," combined with Harry's own profound inability to let go of all emotion.
Especially his anger towards Snape himself.
Exactly. His deep-seated anger at Snape, who embodies so much of his past trauma and present frustration, it creates an impossibly volatile and unproductive environment.
It's doomed from the start.
These lessons are ostensibly meant to protect him, to fortify his mind, but they become another relentless source of torment, frustration, and self-flagellation, highlighting the immense pressure he's under to master crucial skills he doesn't fully understand against a teacher who clearly despises him.
It's a brutal, almost Greek irony, isn't it? The person meant to teach him how to protect his mind, to find serenity and control, is the very person who stirs up the most volatile emotions within him.
Making it virtually impossible for him to succeed.
Exactly. This dynamic itself is a form of psychological warfare within the narrative. It raises a truly uncomfortable question. How much can a traumatized individual bear? When constantly told they are lying or deluded, especially when simultaneously burdened with the secret of a looming war and an almost impossible personal duty, it's a recipe for breakdown, and Harry comes alarmingly close.
He really does.
Okay, let's delve into our final theme for this section. The complex, often heartbreaking nature of family and loyalty, exploring the dynamic between blood ties and chosen bonds. This book really deepens our understanding of what family means in the wizarding world, pushing beyond simple definitions.
This book, more than any before it, truly broadens and challenges our understanding of what family signifies. We start, as always, with the Dursleys.
Ugh, the Dursleys.
Whose extreme aversion to magic is almost grotesquely absolute. Their reaction to even the word owls or magic is one of visceral horror and militant denial. But then Aunt Petunia's surprising knowledge of Dementors, which she heard from that awful boy, meaning James Potter.
That was a shocker.
It reveals a deeper repressed connection to the magical world that she had violently rejected. Their loyalty is to a meticulously manufactured sense of normalcy and a burning hatred of anything different.
Anything that threatens their suffocating suburban illusion.
Exactly. Their family unit is built on exclusion and fear.
And then, in stark contrast, you have the Weasleys.
The absolute opposite.
Their unwavering loyalty and deep emotional ties are not just a contrast. They are the absolute bedrock of what Harry truly considers family. They open their home, their hearts, their lives to him, offering a warmth and acceptance he never found elsewhere.
But this powerful loyalty is challenged internally by Percy's defection.
Yeah, we talked about Percy.
His baffling promotion, despite his prior oversight with Crouch, and his subsequent slamming the door in his mother's face when she tries to reconcile.
Just awful.
It underscores how some prioritize external validation, political ambition, or a desperate desire for social status over fundamental familial bonds. It's a stark, painful reminder that blood isn't always thicker than water.
Especially when the siren call of power and official acceptance is involved.
And what's truly fascinating is how these concepts inherited legacy, chosen family, deep-seated prejudice intertwined with Sirius Black's story.
Right. Grimmauld Place itself is a character.
Totally. His confinement in Grimmauld Place, a house steeped in generations of pure blood history and dark magic, embodies the suffocating weight of his biological family. We see his family tapestry, a chilling visual representation of the Black family's rigid purity ideals, Andromeda Black marrying a Muggle-born, leading to her literal removal from the tapestry.
Burned off.
Sharply contrasted with Bellatrix and Narcissa's pure-blood marriages. And then there's Kreacher.
Oh, Kreacher, what a piece of work.
The house elf, who embodies this ancient, virulent prejudice, muttering constantly about filthy half-breeds and explicitly despising Sirius as a blood traitor. Kreacher's fierce, twisted loyalty is to the old ways of pure Black family, even if it means actively hating his current master. He represents the toxic legacy of bloodline thinking.
It's a profoundly layered look at inherited prejudice versus freely chosen beliefs and loyalties, isn't it?
Definitely.
Sirius, the ultimate blood traitor, deliberately embraces a chosen family of friends and rebels against his dark heritage, literally burning away a piece of his family tree.
While Kreacher remains fiercely loyal to a past that actively punished Sirius and everything he stood for.
It makes you wonder, how do our chosen families and loyalties challenge or reinforce the expectations of our biological ones? And what is the true, often painful cost of those choices?
Yeah.
It's a powerful undercurrent that shapes so much of the emotional landscape of the book, illustrating that family can be both a sanctuary and a prison.
And it connects directly to the very concept of the order itself. A chosen family fighting for a profound cause, often against their own biological kin. This dynamic highlights the immense personal sacrifices required when loyalty to a cause or freely chosen values ultimately supersedes ingrained familial expectations and societal norms. It's a deep examination of where true allegiance lies.
All right, let's move into our Antivision segment. This is where we play devil's advocate, challenge commonly held belief.
Okay, let's stir things up.
And for Order of the Phoenix, there's no character more universally reviled, more often caricatured, than Dolores Umbridge.
Ugh, yeah, pink nightmare.
Exactly. She's seen as this oppressive, saccharine pink monster. But is it possible she's not just pure evil? Could she be maybe a tragic figure, a product of a deeply flawed system who genuinely believes she's doing the right thing, however misguidedly? Can we find a sliver of, dare I say, empathy for her, or at least understanding?
It's a challenging proposition, isn't it, to look beyond the pink twin set and the chilling smile. But if we consider her from a different angle, however unpalatable that might initially seem, she is undeniably a direct extension of Fudge's paranoia and the Ministry's rampant denial.
It's his instrument.
Precisely. Her most egregious actions, the educational decrees, her role as Hogwarts High Inquisitor, even her initial placement at Hogwarts, are explicitly sanctioned by the Minister. She states, this is an exciting new phase in the Minister's plan to get to grips with what some are calling the falling standards at Hogwarts. She's not acting in a vacuum of malice. She is empowered by and diligently fulfilling the agenda of the highest authority in the land. She's the loyal bureaucrat implementing a repressive policy.
So from her perspective, Dumbledore is this dangerous rogue element attempting to overthrow the Ministry.
Which is Fudge's line.
Exactly. And Harry is a deluded, attention-seeking person who fuels unrest. If you genuinely believe that the official line is correct, that Voldemort has not returned, and that Dumbledore and Harry are undermining state stability, Then her methods, however extreme, could be seen as aimed at restoring order in a world she perceives as spiraling out of control. It's a twisted kind of conviction, but maybe a conviction nonetheless. She truly believes she's stopping dangerous rumor-mongering and restoring what she sees as proper discipline and hierarchy. She's a zealot of order.
Her actions, then, could stem from a deeply ingrained prejudice and a fervent belief in the supremacy of her own vision of order. When faced with the centaurs, she screams, "Filthy half-breeds, beasts, uncontrolled animals," while horrific and undeniably prejudiced.
Horrific, yeah.
This isn't random sadism, perhaps. It's a belief born from a worldview where non-human magical creatures are inherently inferior and disorderly. She genuinely sees herself as restoring the proper hierarchy and quashing threats to her perceived ideal of a pure, orderly wizarding society. Her belief in her own rightness is chillingly absolute, almost like a mirror to many real-world figures who commit atrocities under the banner of their warped ideology.
And what about that chilling line, "What Cornelius doesn't know won't hurt him," when she admits to ordering Dementors after Harry?
That's a tough one to defend.
Incredibly hard. But if we're playing devil's advocate, could it suggest a cold, almost bureaucratic pragmatism, not necessarily pure sadism, a belief in necessary evils for a greater good? Her version of order and stability. She's willing to cross lines, even break laws, if she genuinely believes it serves the ultimate goal of crushing dissent and maintaining the ministry's narrative. It's a kind of chilling self-justification that we see in real-world authoritarian figures, where the ends justify the means no matter how brutal.
That's a powerful point, and it pushes us to consider the fine line between misguided conviction and outright cruelty. However,
yes,
the source material offers a pretty compelling counterpoint to any attempt to fully redeem or justify her, doesn't it?
Exactly, because then there's the blood quill. That's where the devil's advocate argument, for me, really breaks down, don't you think?
Absolutely. The blood quill is something else.
"I must not tell lies," scratched into Harry's hand, oozing blood. That isn't just about restoring order or maintaining a narrative.
No.
It's about inflicting prolonged physical pain and psychologically torturing a child to silence dissent through outright sadistic cruelty. The words don't fade. They remain scratched there, oozing droplets of blood, a lasting testament to her methods.
Yeah.
Even if her initial motivation was to restore a perceived order, the methods she employs in that office become pure, unadulterated malice.
That's where the tragic figure gives way to the monstrous, right?
Yeah.
Where the zealot becomes the torturer. It's the point where her means become an end in themselves, where the infliction of suffering transcends the purported goal of order. The blood quill is not about control. It's about humiliation and torture for its own sake. It fundamentally challenges the idea that her actions are merely misguided, suggesting a deeper, darker core of inherent cruelty. It truly makes you wonder, where is the line between strict adherence to perceived order and pure sadism?
Yeah.
And perhaps for Umbridge, that line was blurred or maybe just non-existent.
So it leaves us with this profound question. Can a person's actions ever be truly justified by their, however misguided, beliefs? Or do the methods themselves ultimately define their morality?
It's a question that continues to resonate far beyond the pages of this book, echoing in every historical instance of tyranny justified by a greater good.
Okay, let's take an empathy dive now into the inner world of a character who is often overlooked, often misunderstood.
But who really comes into his own in this book.
Absolutely. He carries immense hidden burdens and a quiet, profound resilience. Neville Longbottom. He's so often portrayed as clumsy, forgetful, seemingly overshadowed by the trio, but this book really peels back those layers.
It's truly fascinating how Order of the Phoenix brings Neville's hidden depths to the absolute forefront, transforming him from a bumbling sidekick into a figure of quiet strength. We learn the devastating, horrific truth about his parents, Frank and Alice Longbottom, who were tortured into insanity by you-know-who's followers, Bellatrix Lestrange specifically.
Just brutal.
This profound, enduring trauma explains so much about his earlier struggles with confidence, his insecurity, and his grandmother's understandable, albeit stifling, overprotectiveness.
That's harsher from Augusta.
Yeah, she constantly tells Professor Marchbanks he's not as good as his dad, placing immense, almost unbearable pressure on him, fueling his internal struggle with self-worth.
This external pressure, coupled with the crushing weight of his parents' fate, fuels a quiet but incredibly powerful determination in Neville. Think about his unwavering support for Dumbledore and Harry early on, even when public opinion turns viciously against them.
When it was dangerous to support them.
Exactly. Neville stands firm, declaring with quiet conviction, My family have always stood firm behind Dumbledore, and so do I.
That's a powerful moment.
That's not a clumsy, forgetful boy speaking. That's a young man deeply rooted in his family's values, displaying a moral fortitude that many older, more seemingly confident characters lack, even in the face of widespread denial and ridicule. It's a moment of profound, unassuming bravery.
And his struggles in the DA meetings, while sometimes leading to humorous mishaps like his wand flying across the room.
He tries so hard.
They highlight his dedication, not his ineptitude. He struggles with spells, yes, but he commits himself with a singular focus. Cho even comments, "You made me nervous. I was doing all right before then," despite her own struggles. He doesn't give up, showing a profound, almost stubborn commitment to learning and fighting back when the official system under Umbridge so spectacularly fails them.
His vulnerability, his visible effort makes his every small victory even more poignant and relatable. He's the embodiment of perseverance.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting and heartbreaking, a moment that truly deepens our empathy for him. The visit to St. Mungo's.
Oh, yeah. That scene.
When he sees his parents and they don't recognize him, but his mother gives him that Dribbles blowing gum wrapper.
Heartbreaking.
And he looks anywhere but at Harry and the others when he says, "I'm not ashamed."
Such a powerful line.
This single line, delivered with quiet defiance, reveals the deep personal pain beneath his quiet demeanor. The internal conflict of acknowledging his parents' sacrifice while grappling with his own perceived inadequacy and the public shame associated with their fate. It's a moment of immense vulnerability that allows us to see the true, profound depth of his character, a quiet, suffering hero in his own right.
And this raw, emotional moment leads directly to his fierce loyalty and incredible bravery in the Department of Mysteries.
He really steps up there.
When Harry, Ron, and Hermione are injured, Neville, despite his own terror and broken nose, insists, "We'll deck her with us, Hermione. You're better at fighting them than I am." He picks up Hermione's wand, knowing his own dad's old wand was broken in the chaos by Dolohov.
Yeah.
This accidental destruction of his father's wand is a profound loss, a symbolic breaking free from the expectation of being his father.
While simultaneously stepping up.
Exactly. Stepping up on his own terms, in his own right.
Yeah.
He literally sacrifices a piece of his inherited legacy for the survival of his friends, demonstrating a courage uniquely his own, born not of innate power, but of sheer resolute will.
Imagine, for a moment, the entire narrative from Neville's perspective.
Wow.
Every clumsy spell, every nervous stammer, every quiet act of defiance against Umbridge. It would be a monumental victory against the crushing shadow of his parents' fate and the immense expectations of his family name.
It's a different story entirely.
His journey isn't about being the chosen one, but about forging his own identity, finding his authentic courage, and defining his own heroism despite deep, personal, and profoundly public pain. It's a powerful, often overlooked story of quiet resilience that truly resonates.
It pushes you to reflect on our own lives, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What strengths lie beneath the surface of people we often overlook or dismiss? How does personal tragedy, when faced with quiet determination, shape true resilience and character? Neville's arc reminds us that heroism isn't always flashy or prophesied. Sometimes it's just a quiet, determined refusal to give up, even when the world expects you to fail.
Beautifully put. Okay, let's shift gears again and explore something most readers, maybe even diehard fans, might subtly overlook.
Oh, the best.
The pervasive theme of confinement and the illusion of freedom that extends far beyond just Sirius. It's subtly woven throughout Order of the Phoenix, almost like a background hum beneath the main narrative.
That's an astute observation, because it's everywhere once you start looking for it, isn't it?
Right.
So many characters experience a form of imprisonment, whether it's physical, psychological, or even social. Sirius Black is, of course, the most obvious and tragic example. He's physically free from Azkaban, which is a massive victory.
Huge.
But he's utterly imprisoned in Grimmauld Place, unable to leave. His profound bitterness, he hasn't seen daylight for months and is literally confined to the ancestral home he detests, and his reckless, desperate acts.
Like going to the station.
Yeah, venturing out to the platform to see Harry off. They stem directly from this deep, soul-crushing confinement. He feels his freedom is a cruel illusion, a gilded cage.
Exactly. And then there's Harry himself. He appears free, going back to Hogwarts, living among friends.
But he's not really free either.
Not at all. He's emotionally imprisoned by his trauma, the Ministry's constant, almost paranoia-inducing surveillance. Mrs. Fig and Mundungus tailed him in secret before the Dementor attack. And Dumbledore's protective yet isolating silence. His Unsettling dreams of long, dark corridors, all finishing in dead ends and locked doors, perfectly symbolize this trapped feeling. He's not physically chained, but his mind and emotions are in a profound, invisible cage, constantly under siege.
It's like a magical Truman Show meets a psychological thriller.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And we see it acutely in the house elves, too. They represent a form of magical servitude, right? Creature is literally bound by an ancient, almost toxic loyalty to the Black family and their ingrained prejudices, muttering endlessly about filthy half-breeds and reveling in the dark history of the house. He's trapped by his master's commands and his own deeply ingrained ancestral beliefs.
He can't escape his programming, almost.
Kind of. And Dobby, having been set free, is much, much happier in his chosen service, yet he still works tirelessly for Harry and the Order, almost to the point of self-harm. Hermione's passionate efforts with SPEW and the House Elf hats, which Ron perceives as tricking them.
Ron just doesn't get it.
They highlight the inherent unsettling issues of magical servitude, raising profound questions about whether true liberation is truly possible for their kind within their society, even for those supposedly free.
And Hagrid. He comes back from his mission, injured, bruised, bleeding.
Yeah, rough trip.
Cast with the secret of Grop, his giant half-brother. Glop himself is a giant needing to be civilized and literally roped down a form of confinement for his own safety and, crucially, the safety of others.
Keeping him hidden.
Hagrid hides him, essentially placing Grop in a contained, hidden prison within the Forbidden Forest. A literal cage within a forest. It's a benevolent confinement, perhaps, but confinement nonetheless.
This theme extends even to creatures like the Thestrals.
How interesting. Yeah.
They're invisible to most, only visible to those who have seen death and fully processed it. They pull the carriages for Hogwarts, seemingly free to roam the forest, but intrinsically tied to their role, a kind of magical public transport. Their very visibility, or chilling lack thereof, links freedom not just to physical movement, but to profound experience and trauma. They are free to move, but their existence is bound by the invisible threads of death and perception, a silent, pervasive reminder of loss.
And here's where it gets really interesting, almost a meta-commentary, even Umbridge.
Umbridge again?
Yeah, the ultimate enforcer of confinement and control. She has a subtle moment that reflects this theme. Her office fire is noted as the only one not being watched when Harry tries to communicate with Sirius through the Flu network.
Huh. I got that detail.
This small detail implies a constant, pervasive surveillance state from which even the overseer desires escape, or at least a private, unwatched space. She wants to be the one pulling the strings, but even she operates within a larger, unspoken system of surveillance and potential constraint. Maybe.
That's a fascinating read. This pervasive sense of limited freedom, whether physical, psychological, or social, suggests a wizarding world grappling with its own boundaries and hidden truths. It's a powerful subtext that raises profound questions about what true liberation means, not just for individuals like Harry and Sirius, but for an entire society struggling with the return of a Dark Lord and the creeping authoritarianism of its own government.
It's a world grappling with its own chains, visible and invisible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into a mini-debate, a truly polarizing moment, perhaps the most controversial decision in the entire book.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Dumbledore's choice to keep Harry in the dark. About Voldemort's activities, Sirius's role, even the prophecy itself, he explicitly tells Sirius not telling Harry more than he needs to know. He even tells Snape, looking back, "It was a mistake for me not to teach you myself."
Yeah.
Was this a masterstroke of strategic protection for Harry? Or was it a catastrophic failure of judgment born from his own overprotective affection and perhaps a touch of arrogance?
It's fascinating, isn't it, to dissect the actions of a character so revered. On one hand, Dumbledore in his moment of profound confession at the end.
That raw moment in his office.
Exactly. He directly states to Harry, "I cared about you too much. I cared more for your happiness than your knowing the truth. I acted exactly as Voldemort expects we fools who love to act." He admits his greatest weakness is his failure to understand there are things much worse than death.
Powerful admission.
He even says, with a hint of awe, "I never dreamed that I would have such a person on my hands," referring to Harry's incredible resilience. This suggests a profoundly human flaw, a desire born of immense love to shield a child from the unbearable burden of war and destiny. He believes he's protecting Harry's innocence and well-being, attempting to give him a childhood he himself never truly had.
But this care, however well-intentioned, led directly to the very disaster he was desperately trying to prevent, didn't it?
You could certainly argue that.
Harry's profound isolation and devastating lack of crucial information fueled his frustration and susceptibility to Voldemort's insidious mind games. He spends months tormented by dreams of long, dark corridors, all finishing in dead ends and locked doors, without ever realizing it's a literal premonition of the Department of Mysteries.
He thinks it's just dreams.
Exactly. If Harry had known about Legilimency earlier, understood his scar was a dangerous conduit, or that the locked door was a real, tangible threat, might Sirius still be alive?
It's the huge what if.
Hermione herself warns him, echoing Dumbledore's own advice to Sirius. Sirius told you there was nothing more important than you learning to close your mind. The lack of transparency didn't protect, it bred mistrust and chaos, and that absence of trust ultimately led to Harry rushing headlong into a trap that cost him his last true family. It's a tragic irony, almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of Dumbledore's own making.
Yet, to offer a counterpoint, Dumbledore had genuinely compelling reasons for his profound secrecy, however painful it was for Harry.
Okay, what are they?
He explicitly states that he knew Voldemort could use Harry's mind as a devastating weapon. Voldemort's aim in possessing you would not have been my destruction, it would have been yours.
Possessing him, right.
If Harry had been privy to all the Order's plans, had his mind more openly connected to Dumbledore's, it would have put him in even greater danger. Dumbledore was sure at the time that nothing could have been more dangerous than to open your mind even further to Voldemort while in my presence.
The risk of exposure was too high.
Exactly. The prophecy itself emphasizes that neither can live while the other survives, indicating a unique, almost symbiotic connection only Dumbledore seemed to fully grasp. He also recognized that Voldemort chose Harry over Neville, marking him as his equal and giving him powers. Perhaps he needed Harry to develop those powers organically, under pressure.
Like a trial by fire.
Kind of, rather than through direct, perhaps predictable instruction that Voldemort could anticipate. It was a calculated risk for the ultimate war.
It still feels like an enormous gamble, doesn't it? A gamble with Harry's fragile mental state and, ultimately, his life and the lives of those he loved.
It was a huge gamble.
The pervasive denial from the Ministry meant Dumbledore had to fight on multiple fronts simultaneously against Voldemort and the entrenched political establishment.
Yeah, fighting a war on two fronts.
Harry, being the only you-know-what for Miles, was literally caught in the middle of this multi-front war. Was Dumbledore's brilliant plan too convoluted, sacrificing Harry's short-term well-being and psychological health for a long-term uncertain outcome? Could a different, more transparent approach have prevented Sirius's death, or at least Harry's intense psychological suffering? He knew Harry was struggling under more burdens than any student who has ever passed through this school, yet he chose to add the crushing burden of ignorance and isolation. It feels cruel.
It truly is the classic tragic hero's dilemma, isn't it? A leader burdened with unimaginable knowledge, facing impossible choices, weighing the immediate profound pain of a few against the potential catastrophe for all. The tension between protection and empowerment is absolutely central to Dumbledore's character in this book. He sees his choices, however brutal for Harry, as necessary to prepare him for a war only he truly understands.
But does he understand? He admits his own mistakes later.
He does. He acknowledges his flaw of loving too much, but in his mind at the time, it seems like a calculated, heart-wrenching risk for the greater war. A burden he takes on himself. He is, in a sense, a master chess player who sees too many moves ahead, sacrificing a pawn to save the king, even if that pawn is the boy he loves.
A pawn he claims to love too much.
Yeah.
It's, deeply complex.
Very.
This deep dive into Order of the Phoenix leaves us with so much to ponder, so many uncomfortable truths. It's a powerful, almost brutal reminder that even in a magical world brimming with wands and spells, the most consequential battles are often psychological, political, and profoundly personal.
Indeed. And it pushes you to ask that big what if? What if the Ministry had truly believed Dumbledore from the very start? Confronted Voldemort collectively?
Right. What would have changed?
Would the wizarding world have avoided so much pain and catastrophic loss, including the tragic, senseless death of Sirius Black? Would Harry's journey have been less solitary, less burdened by guilt, less psychologically ravaged?
It's a truly compelling what if that redefines the narrative, doesn't it?
Completely.
A truly profound thought experiment that changes everything. Okay, if you're looking for another narrative that explores the insidious, chilling creep of authoritarianism and the devastating power of denial,
What do you got?
I'd highly, highly recommend the film The Lives of Others. It's set in East Germany, 1984.
Oh, fantastic film.
Isn't it? It has that same oppressive, suffocating atmosphere where every move is watched, every conversation listened to, and the truth itself is a dangerous weapon. It's like Umbridge's Hogwarts, but with more typewriters, grim concrete, and tragically, far less magic.
That's a great comparison. Or for a truly immersive fantasy spin on the weight of an unexpected burden and the consequences of wielding power.
Yes.
I'd suggest A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Classic.
Absolutely. It delves into a young wizard's mistakes and the lifelong profound consequences of wielding power, echoing Harry's journey of self-discovery, confronting his own shadow, and accepting immense responsibility. It's just timeless.
Great recommendation. What an incredible deep dive into Order of the Phoenix. We absolutely love bringing these conversations to you. If you got value from this deep dive, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps us know what you enjoy and allows us to reach more fellow travelers.
Please do.
And we'd love to hear your hot take. What's one commonly held belief about Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix that you wholeheartedly disagree with? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, we want to hear those controversial opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to the Deep Dive channel on YouTube. It truly helps us grow and share these deep dives with more of you, building this community of curious minds.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking,
And keep jumping through those pages.